Forgive me, I can't be on camera today, but I thought I would take this time to answer a question that I get often by reading you a meditation or a journal entry that I did about the question. The question comes in many different forms, but mainly it boils down to something like, Brandon, you seem so smart. You seem so rational, so logical. How were you in the faith so long? What did you tell yourself? How did you not see the truth? Though there are many answers I could give, there was one that stuck out to me that I started to write about. Tell me if any of you can relate to this. The first thought I let finish. There are thoughts you don't realize you've been cutting short. And I always thought I would know if I was getting in my own way. I thought it would feel like censorship. But stopping these thoughts just short of their destination actually felt like I was doing something positive, like I was in charge. The thoughts didn't feel censored. They felt redirected, handled, managed, escorted back to safety before they wander too far. And looking back, I know that I actually thought that was maturity. I guess I had been taught to think that. A question would surface. Something small, almost polite, nothing dramatic, nothing openly defiant, just a quiet nudge against the edges of what I believed. What if this doesn't hold up? Or even softer still, what if I've just misunderstood something fundamental? Almost instantly, something inside me would intervene. Not harsh, not panicked, quite measured, very responsible. Be careful. You don't need to tug on that thread. Some questions are dangerous for a reason, and so I would comply. The thought would dissolve before it reached its natural conclusion, like a door closed before you've seen what's inside, like a sentence stopped mid, and it really was that simple. A thought never finished, so that even the memory of having the thought seemed unclear, abstract, too vague, like I never asked it at all. I became good at that. I told myself it was reverence, that humility required restraint, that faith meant knowing when to stop. God was ultimate, I was limited. So when doubts flickered, I interpreted them as instability, as cracks that needed sealing, not exploring. Who was I to do such a thing? Curiosity became something to monitor. Intellectual wandering felt reckless, and none of it felt oppressive at the time. Look at me, I was being disciplined. I was guarding something precious. I was protecting truth from my own fallibility. But truth shouldn't need that kind of protection. That realization came as a thought that simply wasn't interrupted. Finally, was able to be completed. There's no rebellion in it. There's no emotional surge. It was just this quiet internal permission. If something is true, I thought, it should remain true under scrutiny. That was it. A simple extension, a sentence allowed to finish itself. So I waited. I expected resistance, some internal alarm, a sense of crossing a line, but there was only stillness. Where was the collapse? Where was the spiritual backlash? Where was the unraveling of my identity? There was none of that. There was just clarity. Did I dare? Should I try again? So I let another thought complete itself. If examining a belief threatens it, what does that say about the belief? Again, I waited. Nothing. No punishment, no shame. Just a widening sense of space. It's hard to explain, but in the moment I could almost feel myself moving like a magnet closer to reality. Like I could finally feel the pull of gravity, something real and tangible and powerful and also invisible, like the God I thought I was supposed to believe in, but I never felt him the way I felt that. What an admittance. It struck me then how many of my conclusions had never actually been reached. They had been inherited, reinforced, defended, but not followed all the way down. There were entire mental paths that I had avoided, but now I didn't have to stop at the tree line. What was beyond? Was I really going to allow myself to walk? All this time I had been living in partial sentences. Finishing a thought might sound small, but it isn't when you haven't. Because when you follow an idea to its end, you surrender control over where it lands. That's why the motto for this channel has been about following truth wherever it may lead. That kind of submission, that kind of surrender, that is beautiful. That is honest. Two things that I couldn't quite feel comfortable calling my belief in God. When you follow an idea to its end, you might discover alignment. You might discover error. You might discover that what you were told was unshakable shifts under pressure. The risk of that at one time in my life, for most of my life actually, had felt completely unacceptable. I saw that I had not been leaving room to be wrong. So when I finally let a question reach that natural end, the unexpected was allowed to happen. The sky didn't fall. The world did not dim. I didn't become less moral, less thoughtful, less grounded. If anything, those things increased. Because now my conclusions weren't inherited, nor were they held on to blindly. They were earned. I began to notice how often stopping early had been praised as virtue, how frequently caution had replaced investigation, how many times silence had been mistaken for wisdom. But I get it. There is comfort in unfinished thoughts. You never have to face their outcome. You get to control where they remain. You can preserve stability by preventing completion. Letting a thought truly arrive is an act of trust. And once I trusted that truth could withstand examination, that something shifted permanently. A reframing of what questions were. They were tools. I could sit now with tension without rushing to resolve it. I could admit uncertainty without devastating anxiety. I could follow logic wherever it led, even to the unknown, the unfamiliar, the scary, the new. All of this from something so simple, removing the automatic interrupting of my mind, the self-protection just to not have to bear new belief or lack thereof. And so I made a decision. I was going to allow ideas to breathe, to stretch, to conclude. I was going to let questions run free, roam in the big open spaces of my mind. Some ideas, some questions, some previous conclusions held firm, and some didn't. And I had to let the pieces of it all just fall and land where they may. I notice now that what I was actually doing was a reshaping of my relationship to thinking itself. And I began to believe in myself, which I know sounds treasonous to my younger ears. I believed in myself, something I was told my entire life to never do, to never even try. Because who was I? I was nothing. The personification of brokenness and evil. An understanding, if I had one at all, was not one for me to lean on. But I'm leaning on it now, and I leaned on it then. And the belief I had in myself was justified, because with that small change of letting the question finish, of permitting and making a place for what is real, my mind became expansive. So much so that a brand new world was born. Reality. Who could tell what was next? This was real life, and I was really living. Faith was pretending. Believing in the next life was a denial of this life. And so, I hope that answers your question. It was nothing evil. It was nothing dubious. I didn't even know I was doing it. And if I noticed anything at all, again, I think I patted myself on the back for protecting my all-powerful God from the truth. Are you doing the same? Are you fighting for a God that's not even speaking to you? Are you defending a God who bragged about what you're trying to take away from him? Are you desperate for a context that is different from the real one that only makes the behavior all the more horrific? Why do you try so hard? When will you let your real questions, real doubts finish their race? And when they arrive, at whatever finish line they find, will you be true enough to follow? I want to specially call out Gnarlywill, someone who has made the biggest pledge that you can, that I have unfortunately left off of this list for too long now. But also, of course, those who have been supporting for a long time: Ann, Boris, Chris, Grant, GVI, Jimmy, Joe, Kitboga, Matthew, Perry, and Shawn. Then our Humanist heroes: Chris, Craig, James, Jarrod, Kristi. Our Atheist advocates: Aquitar, Caleb, Dakota, Dan, Drew, Jeff, Jeffrey, Jeremy, Jugs, Julie, Malcom, Paul, Sparky, and Thomas. As well as all of my secular scholar patrons.